Glendora, and then we'll go to some more people who've made it so well in their fields. Mrs. Johnson was asked, did your father die of a natural causes? And Mrs. Johnson says, oh no, he had a doctor. Harry was very, very impressed by how intelligent she is. And he says, well, Mary has enough brains for 2 people. He thought about that a while, and he says, that's why she's just the right person for me. His new girlfriend in for a ride in his car, and the girlfriend wanted the top down. And Bill says, okay, I'll put the top down. It took him 3 hours. The problem is that Bill doesn't have a convertible. Isn't daylight saving time wonderful? You set your watch ahead an hour, and then the sun goes down an hour later every night. And Annette wants to know, how come does the sun know that? Did you hear about the dentist? And Joe said to the dentist, he says, Doc, you still haven't pulled a right tooth. And the dentist says, I know, Joe. He says, but I'm getting closer. And you heard about the dentist and the manicurist who got married? Yeah, now they fight tooth and nail. The second day of your diet is always the easiest day. Have you ever noticed that? Why? Because the second day is the day that you give it up. And Joanne says she has started on the long, long journey to thinness. The trouble is she ran into a problem right away. She found out that she can't travel on an empty stomach. And you've heard about the Wonder Diet? Well, you eat everything you want at night, and then in the morning you wonder if your clothes are going to fit. The Army goes in the front. And Mary, she's really solved her dieting problem. She's got herself a new scale, and a symmetric scale. And now she doesn't know what she weighs. Wonderful diet. He doesn't eat anything but bananas. He doesn't drink anything but coconut milk. Now he's not losing any weight, but boy, can he climb trees. And Pete says that he sticks to his diet religiously. You know what that means? That means during church he doesn't eat. Mary got herself one of these talking scales, one of those electronic elaborate scales, and she got on it the other day, and the voice said, 1 at a time. Joan is on the light diet. That's a good diet, the light diet. As soon as it gets light, she starts to eat. And Paul decided he had to go on a diet when he went to the playground and decided that to get on the seesaw, he had to invite the rest of the neighborhood. Folks, what's a good definition of a diet? A good definition of a diet is you keep putting off while you're putting on. Pat said that his doctor said that he would promise that he'd have on his feet within 2 weeks. And Pat said, well, did he? Did he have you on his feet, on your feet within 2 weeks? And Pat says, he sure did. He says, when I got the bill, I had to cut. And Lou went to the doctor, and the doctor says, your cough is much better this morning. And Lou says, that's because I stayed up all night practicing it. And Mrs. Gordon, when she got her bill from the doctor, she said to the doctor she would like to have him take something off the bill. And the doctor said, well, why should I? And Mrs. Gordon says, well, remember all the money that you made? He says, when my Harry spread measles through the whole 5th grade. And Pete says his doctor is fine. The only thing he doesn't like about his doctor is that the doctor stores his hypodermic needles on a dartboard. That when his doctor operated on it, the doctor left a sponge inside him. And his friend says, gee, that must be painful. And Ed says, no, he says, it just makes me thirsty. This is Glendora, a cheerful look at life. And let's return now to a chat with Glendora and talk to some more people who have done so very, very well in their field and who are willing to share it with you, and to give you some idea how you could get into such a field. Science Association, and they're having a victory party. They won the ETPA against very, very heavy competition. And this is August the 1st, 1997, Friday, at Rudy's Beau Rivage on the Hudson River in Dobbs Ferry. Congratulations, tenants. This is Pat. And Pat, you're what, the president?
No, I'm one of the coordinators of the Westchester Tenants Coalition.
And good for you. How old is the Westchester Tenants?
Well, we're going to have our year anniversary this October.
Oh, you deserve a lot of credit. Who organized it, Pat?
Well, I would say there was a nucleus. It was a brainchild of 26 people that met at a diner one day, and Jay Shapiro and Dennis Hanratty and myself, Marge, Pavlika, and many others who joined us, Mary, Willard, and Sue Hines, and here we are.
Here you are.
Yes.
Your husband's in it too. This is your
yes, my husband, Jerry Klotzman, yes, is also on the committee.
So you're celebrating your big victory, aren't you?
Yes, we are. I think that if the tenants really examine things and realize that they have a lease, the right to a lease, the right not to be evicted, the right of tenure, the right of succession, and we have all those protections for the next 6 years.
That's right, under the ETPA.
Right.
Emergency Tenant Protection Act.
The new law, which is retroactive to June, which will start in the summer of '97. I think we'll be calling on others again. We're going to try to stay alive, be active, be a tenant advocate, put out a newsletter, and continue to help tenants. We're not going to be complacent in the next 6 years. We're going to stay alive and be ready to fight if we need to. Hopefully we won't have to. And the rents will be at a reasonable place for us all.
And we have our tenants' rights.
Right. We mustn't forget that.
Thank you, Pat Klotzman.
And thank you, Glendora. We march together.
Chairperson of the Westchester Tenants Association. Tell us about your great victory.
Well, it was a great victory. It was a hard-fought one. It went on since last fall when we first started in Tarrytown Diner, October 24th, until we got the laws renewed on June 19th. A lot of good people came together throughout the county and worked really hard day and night. Volunteers said, this is an issue that's important to all of us. This is our homes. This is our
this is our homes.
And they're not going to be taken away by some rascal politician. And then we're going to be doling money out to the highest bidders. Homes are important. Security of tenants, young, old, disabled, working class people. It's important that people have a certain security they can live in their community and not feel threatened that their landlord's going to throw them out for no reason or dramatically raise their rents without any providing good services.
Dennis, what about the courts?
Well, the courts, are supposed to enforce the laws, and the law that we got renewed is the basis of all of our protections. Without that law, the lenders could do virtually anything they want. They could raise rents arbitrarily. They could evict people without any cause. So it would have just caused tremendous chaos throughout the county of Westchester. And we think it would have just caused incredible social disruption.
Yes, that's right. And so are the courts doing their job, Dennis?
Well, I think the courts, are only going to do the job that we make them do. There's always got to be oversight by the citizens in each community making the
That's what it is.
Because we cannot compete with the real estate industry with dollars, and they can hire high-priced attorneys and things like that. So we have to have a very aggressive, a very astute citizenry to make sure that the courts are doing their job, they're enforcing the laws, and that they're interpreting laws, protecting all citizens. We can't, like I said, we cannot compete on the same playing field with the real estate industry with their tremendous access to financial resources.
Yes. As they get enriched, we get impoverished.
Exactly. We're moving more towards a two-tier society. It's fabulously wealthy, and then everybody else, scraping the bottom. And that's really not the kind of society and the culture I think we want to live in. We want to live
not in America.
Exactly. So we want to, empower our citizens to become part of, some kind of local community groups with the Westchester Tenants Coalition or their own local tenants coalition or their own community-based organization. People have got to, get up and they've got to say, we're going to stand up for our communities. We're going to stand up for our rights, our homes. And I think this victory was a very fulfilling one for those who participated in it. We hope it'll be an encouraging model for others and any kind of citizen activism.
And you got them when you said 2.6 million voters. And you got them when you said, we'll remember when it comes November.
Exactly. There was a lot of key phrases, and those things work, but those things don't work in a vacuum. They work because good people say, we're going to stand up and we're going to fight for these things. And we had a lot of people who were willing to take a stand saying, I'm going to give up this to that for this couple of months, I'm going to work hard. We had a group of people, a lot of them were working on this thing tonight. A good core group of 15, 20 people come to meetings every week, you know, writing letters every night, making phone calls, working pretty much around the clock to make this happen.
Dennis, we thank you so much.
Thank you.
God bless you. You did a great job.
Thank you.
Donated by merchants throughout the county. We're going to raffle them all off tonight. Please see me or one of the other people selling tickets. $3 for the red ones, $1 for the blue ones. Please buy raffle tickets.
The beautiful Hudson River. And what time is it, folks? It's about 7:30 p.m. And this is the Tenants Victory Party. Hooray for you, Tenants. You're the underdog and you beat the greedies.
I think I'm wrong. This isn't bad. This is and also it's taller.
You're doing status, he's always saying. How you doing?
Hello. Turn around, George. It's like a wedding here. George.
How's Glendora?
We love this food. It's delicious.
Wonderful.
Very good. I love it. Say when.
That was a good idea. Probably. Oh! She wasn't kidding.
And victorious tenants.
We could sit at that table.
What is it like outside? Do you like it?
Yes.
What do you think of it? Do you like the Hudson River?
Yes.
Do you like seeing all the Amtrak trains?
Most of them local.
It's time now for Glendora Cheerful Look at Life, and this is Little Carmino Cat. And folks, what do you call fake spaghetti? The great impasta. John was asked, why did you work for 25 years in the finance department in your company? You stayed there for 25 years. Why? And John says, well, because that's where they kept the money. And Bill says, all of the equipment in this company is insured, except the clock, and the employees keep a good watch on that. And guess what? Our company has found something that will do the work of 5 men. What is that? A woman. Sid says, this is his business motto. He says, we will give our hands and we'll give our hearts in all to this business. And if need be, we will even use our heads. And Joe, the boss, is a very mature thinker. Why? Because all of his ideas are at least 35 years old. Bob bought a calculator with a built-in memory, and one day he turned on his calculator, and the calculator says, "You remember yesterday when you were trying to balance your checking account and you slammed me down on the table?" Every summer, Joan and Bill send their kids to the least expensive but the most reliable place that they can think of, and it's called Camp Grandma. At camp, the swimming instructor got very, very sick, so the swimming instructor sent in the golf pro to substitute for him. And Paul says, "I almost drowned. He kept telling me to hold my head down." John and Joni are going to try something new this year. They decided to send the dog to camp and send the kids to obedience school. And you know what summer camp is? That's a place where the parents spend $1,000 so that the daughter can bring home a 50-cent pot holder. And when Harry picked up his son from summer camp, Harry said to him, "Were you lonesome?" And the little boy says, "No." He says, "But some of the kids were lonesome." He says, "The ones who had dogs." Don says that with all these fancy gadgets that they have on cars today, he says Detroit should invent a windshield wiper that can't hold a parking ticket. And Paul says he's beat inflation. When he gets on I-95 to go to work, he turns off the ignition and he lets all the rest of the cars push him all the way to work. And the policeman said to Dick, "Pull over, you don't have a taillight." And Dick jumped out of the car and he went to the rear of the car and he looked, and then he began to quiver and shake all over, and the policeman says, "Oh, come on, it's not that bad, it's only a taillight." And Dick says, "Yeah, but," he says, "where's my trailer and my wife?" Harry went for a ride in his friend's new car, and he obeyed all of the seatbelt laws. And when he got out of the car, he unbuckled his waist seat belt, and then he unbuckled his shoulder strap, and then he unbuckled all the other belts, and then he got out of the car, and his pants fell down. And John says that he bought a used car, and he won't tell you how far how many times the odometer has been set back. He says, but the mileage is in Roman numerals. Mary has a car, and she calls it flattery. You want to know why? Because it doesn't get her anywhere. And Bill and Joni have got they have a car that breaks down so often that they've got the perfect second car. Yeah, it's a tow truck. And Joni says that she babies her car, and her friend says, "Yeah, that's true. It won't go anywhere without a rattle." Bob, Mrs. Morgan says, "Describe chess." And Bob says, "Chess is a game where people sit and stare straight ahead and never move a muscle, and they sit for hours." And Bill says, "Oh yeah, that's civil service." Anthony says that his parents were so ashamed of him when he was a little kid that they used to hire another kid to take his part in home movies. And Anthony says that he was so bad that his parents never bought a pumpkin at Halloween time. They always made Anthony stand in the window. And he says when Anthony says he told his parents that he was going to run away from home, his father says, "I want it in writing." And when Anthony played hide and seek, none of the other kids would go look for him. Charlie was in the waiting room in the maternity ward of the hospital, and the nurse came out, and she says, "Well, what did you want, a girl or a boy?" And Charlie says, "I wanted a girl." And the nurse says, "Too bad, you got a boy." Charlie says, "Well, that's okay. That was my second choice." What do you think of this for an apple? This is what you call a big apple, right? And that's exactly where we're going next, to the Big Apple. And we're going to interview somebody who is very, very successful in his field, and is going to tell you kids how you could perhaps choose that as a field and be successful too, and give you some pointers. So this is a Glendora Cheerful Look at Life. Now we go to a chat with Glendora. Chat with Glendora continues. We're in New York City, and Mr. Michael.
Whether judges should be appointed, and if so, by whom, whether they should be elected, if they should run on party labels, if they should, a number of things. And thank you very much for your patience.
No, very informative, very interesting. Members of the public should know, I think we're the only city where our judges are appointed. The only governor or show are elected. And you should also know that there's a strange element that operates here. the city elected body, the mayor and council appoints these members of the bench, but they're paid by the state employees, the state judges. And we have no jurisdiction over those 4 judges I named. They're very important to us, however, because the matters that they deal with, landlord-tenant things and arraignments and low-level felonies and misdemeanors, but certain things that the city does are very important to us there, because there's the court that does the enforcement of our housing code, building code violations, and also the court that hears all vehicle and traffic matters. You know, if you speed and you plead innocent, you will go before one of these judges. But they are state officials appointed by this city elected body. Very please.
That's very interesting. And I don't know when it's going to happen, but the next time around, the council will still be the body to appoint judges. I only hope that at some point, the administration and council decide that the entire council should have to say who is appointed, and not just the majority party. It doesn't matter whether you're Republican or Democrat. If 6 people have to sit here and vote on it, then 6 people should have something to say about it.
Thank you. I think we should stop at this point. Item 2 is a public hearing on a proposed local law introducing No. 2 of 1997, electing a retirement incentive program as authorized by Chapter 41 of the State of New York. Anyone else wish to testify? Yes. Please.
My name is Carol Allen, and I'm a unit also at Hampshire House. At last month's council meeting, we heard from a lot of people, basically that were against the building, which is power over the
water. Generally, it is a quiet place where everyone wants to and enjoys living. However, let's concentrate this with what is being proposed here. You are being asked to allow 47 units on Greenridge Avenue plus 292 assisted living residents for a total of 339 units for the whole complex. Added to this, the staff, somewhere between 34 and 50 outside support people who would have to come in and go out every day. I just can't see a typical day just as it would be after this is completed. If you allow this with a member of the people trying to park around the site, adding to this 1 or 2 big over-the-road 40-foot tractor trailers trying to park into a service bay off of either Livingston or Rutherford, now add to this 1 or 2 emergency vehicles, ambulances, a police car, and throw in for good measure a fire truck. This is just a daily occurrence. No one is moving up or down Greenridge, Livingston, Rutherford, and a mess is on Mamaroneck Avenue. The entire neighborhood is a mess. And this is just one out of the 365 days. Mark my word, this project will be drastically impacting onto the neighborhood and city. My friends, this is not the right place at the right time, nor for that matter, in my opinion, the right project to be granted the zoning change or waiver.
My name is Anne Barry. I'm a residence on Greenwich Avenue, and I do live right next to the building that's only about 32nd Greenwich Avenue. My home is a corner of Greenwich and Longview. I just recently purchased my home in October of '97. This is my first home. I investigated other neighborhoods in Westchester. Some of the towns didn't walk around the neighborhood as this town does. I can walk 1 block, 2-store track, and I return home in this quiet, peaceful neighborhood with very few cars on my Greenwich. All day, there's very few traffic on Longview Avenue. I have the best of both worlds. I feel at home like the streets don't live anywhere else. This avenue is charming, has empathy. Each home has individual character, and the owners have meticulously maintained their property. I've invested $50,000 in my home to improve it and to make it compatible with my neighbors. Everybody in this neighborhood takes pride in their home, and that is why we are all here. We're not allowing anyone here and to disturb this neighborhood because they want to make a profit. This large, obtrusive building will be eyesore. It will create an increase of traffic, which is dangerous for our children. It will cause noise and congestion. Our hospitals, police, and fire departments will be burdened with high demand for their services, and no taxes will alleviate this. A project of this magnitude does not belong here. It is not compatible with size and zoning, and if this is built, it will change the ambiance of Greenwich area and devalue the homes on this block. My home is especially affected by this. I'm currently facing this monster building. And every time I go to use my backyard, I will have no privacy, because this is going to tower over my yard. I know this project is detrimental to our children, our street, and our homes.
Thank you.
Good evening, my name is Glendora. I think I live the nearest to this 300 American project. I live in driveway where I look out my south window, I see my driveway, I see my car parked in a space, and right next to it is the rock wall and this 3-acre property. I have a question for the council. Why are the people in New York City the dumbest people in the country? Because they have the densest population. Now, density is the issue here tonight. And density is what we are against in this property. I am rather weary of the altruism of these developers saying they're helping seniors. Franklin and I are seniors. I am 69 years old and Franklin is 78 years old. We feel like we've been seniors all of our lives. The July 7th council meeting, we had maybe 25 people here to express their concern over this property. Unfortunately, those people were driven away, and that doesn't make tonight look so good. I would like to hear the council speak. I would like to hear the council speak about what they think about this property. We haven't heard any words. You're welcome. And one last comment I will make that Judges Freer in Washington are trampling civil rights in the White Plains Seaport.
Please stay on the subject.
My last comment is that we will remember in November.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Yes.
3 hours more.
that I waste half of my money on the payroll, but the trouble is that I can't figure out which half it is. And Bob says, as soon as I get to work, I do 3 things. 1, I get organized. 2, I call my wife. And 3, I reorganize. And John is a born executive. And Henry says, yes, he is. His father is the owner of the company. Joe says that his baby boy is going to be a born executive, that he's going to grow up to be executive because he's only 5 years old and he already takes 2.5 hours for lunch. And here's another thing, too. Billy asked the boss if he could have 2 hours for lunch, and the boss says, what? He says, 2 hours for lunch? He says, if I do that for you, he says, I'll have to do that for everybody whose wife has quintuplets. And Jerry had such good luck on his going out of business sale that he's thinking about opening up a whole chain of stores for going out of business. And Sid says, my former business didn't have anything to do with football, but it ended up in the hands of a receiver. And work is really a wonderful thing. You know, you got to have a lot of respect for work because, after all, where else would people rest up after their vacations if it wasn't at work? And would you say that the boss is a businessman all the way? Would you say he's a strictly businessman? I think he is, because out on the beach I saw him the other day and he was wearing a bathing suit and it was 3 pieces and it was all pinstripe. And the toy business is doing very well here. I wanted to read you this. The toy business is returning to simple toys. Rubber balls are bouncing back. Kites production has soared sky high, and even boomerangs are making a comeback. And this executive was interviewing Annette for a job, and he says to her, it says here in the application that you were born on May 17th. She says, that's right. And the executive says, what year? And Annette says, every year. Terry said about his company, we'd make a change in management, he says, but the trouble is that we can't figure out now who's really running the company. And creative writing is something that never seems to show up in magazines, or at least it doesn't show up in magazines very often, but it always shows up on a resume. And Steve says, I won't say that my company is doing badly, but at the last annual meeting they played taps. And he said, I walked into the business, and he says, I asked for change for a $20 bill. He says, and they made me a partner. Mrs. Morgan said to the 5th graders, she says, if you take 51% away from 100%, what do you have? And the son of a business tycoon says, control of the company. Folks, do you know what an efficiency expert is? An efficiency expert is smart enough to run your company, but he's not smart enough to start his own business. And Paul says that around the office, he says, sometimes they cut corners. He says, some people have Apple computers. He says, but ours is a lemon. And this year, the boss says that he's going to write the annual report in terms that any stockholder can understand. He's going to write it like this. Look, Pat, look, see the earnings. The earnings are tiny. See the expenses. The expenses are huge. Run, Pat, run. Fresh out of college, Harry has what it takes to become a great business success. Rich parents. And Mary is very, very proud of her son, that he has become general manager of the company. And Mary's husband is not too sure because the son started out as president of the company. This is Glendora, a cheerful look at life, folks. And we wish you the very best. And you hang in there and you keep the courage flowing.
A number of things. And thank you very much for your patience.
No, it's very informative, very interesting. I think members of the public should know, I think we're the only city where our judges are appointed. Youngest I've heard of show they're elected. And you should also know that there's a strange element that operates here. The city elected body, the mayor and council appoints these members of the bench, but they're paid by the state. They're state employees, they're state judges. And we have no jurisdiction over those 4 judges I named. They're very important to us, however, because the matters that they deal with, landlord-tenant things and arraignments and low-level felonies and misdemeanors, but certain things that the city does are very important to us there because there's the court that does the enforcement of our housing code, building code violations, and also the court that deals with all vehicle and traffic matters. You know, if you speak and you plead innocent, you will go before one of these judges. But they are state officials appointed by this city elected body. It's a very, please.
That's very interesting, that I will. And I don't know when it's going to happen, but the next time around, the council is still the body to appoint judges. I only hope that at some point, the administration and council decide that the entire council should have a say in who is appointed, and not just the majority party. It doesn't matter whether you're Republican or Democrat. If 6 people have to sit here and vote on it, then 6 people should have something to say about it.
Thank you. I think we should stop at this point. Item 2 is a public hearing on a proposed local law introducing number 2 of 1997, electing a retirement incentive program as authorized by Chapter 41 of the State of New York. Anyone else wish to testify? Yes. Please.
My name is Carol Hale, and I'm a unit also at Hampshire House. At last month's council meeting, we heard from a lot of people, basically that were against the building, which is power over.
Generally, it is a quiet place where everyone wants to and enjoys living. However, let's concentrate this with what is being proposed here. You are being asked to allow 47 units on Greenridge Avenue plus 292 assisted living residents for a total of 339 units for the whole complex. Added to this, the staff, somewhere between 34 and 50 outside support people who have to come in and go out every day. I just can't see a typical day just as it would be after this is completed. If you allow this with a member of the people trying to park around the site, adding to this 1 or 2 big over-the-road 40-foot tractor trailers trying to park into a service bay off of either Livingston or Rutherford. Now add to this 1 or 2 emergency vehicles, ambulances, a police car, and throw in for good measure a fire truck. This is just a daily occurrence. No one is moving up or down Greenridge, Livingston, Rutherford, and a mess is on Mamaroneck Avenue. The entire neighborhood is a mess. And this is just one out of the 365 days. Mark my word, this project will be drastically impacting onto the neighborhood and city. My friends, this is not the right place at the right time, nor for that matter, in my opinion, the right project to be granted the zoning change waiver. Thank you.
My name is Anne Barry. I'm a resident on Greenridge Avenue, and I do live right next to the building from about 32nd Greenridge Avenue. My home is a quarter of an inch long. I just recently purchased my home in October of '96. This is my first home. I investigated other neighborhoods in Westchester. Some of the towns they walk around and leave as this town does. I can walk 1 block, 2-story drive in this neighborhood. And when I return home, it's quiet, peaceful neighborhood. Very few cars on my Greenwich. All day, there's very few traffic, very few cars on Longview Avenue. I have the best of both worlds. I feel at home on the streets similar to live anywhere else. This avenue is charming and has amenities. Each home has individual character, and the owners have meticulously maintained their property. I've invested $50,000 in my home to improve it and to be compatible with my neighbors. Everybody is able to take pride in their home, and that's why we're all here. We're not allowing anyone here. I know this project is such much about children, our students, and I about our homes. Thank you.
Good evening, my name is Glendora. I think I live the nearest to this 300 Mamaroneck project. I live in the driveway in West. I look out my south window, I see my driveway, I see my car parked in a space, and right next to it is the rock wall and this 3-acre property. I have a question for the council. Why are the people in New York City the dumbest people in the country? Because because they have the densest population. Now, density is the issue here tonight, and density is what we are against in this property. I am rather weary of the altruism of these developers saying they're helping seniors. Franklin and I are seniors. I am 69 years old and Franklin is 78 years old. And we feel like we've been seniors all of our lives. The July 7th council meeting, we had maybe 25 people here to express their concern over this property. Unfortunately, those people were driven away, and that doesn't make tonight look so good. I would like to hear the council speak. I would like to hear the council speak about what they think about this property. We haven't heard any words. You're welcome. And one last comment I will make that Judges Freeman and Washington are trampling civil rights in the White Plains City Court.
Please stay on the subject.
My last comment is that we will remember in November.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Yes. I have written to each and every one on the council, and to you, Mr. Mayor, expressing my, what does that really mean? How big is a lot of stories? Well, think of it this way. I think everybody here has got a pretty good idea how high the Crown Plaza is on Maple Avenue. Eliminate the two main floors of the Crown Plaza because they're very, very high, being the ballrooms and the common area. Think of the rest of it at 11 stories. Really, everybody here, you get a pretty good idea how enormous this property is going to be. Get a relative idea of the physical size of the parking facility.
As resident after resident spoke in opposition to a zoning change, I will be brief out of respect to the people who come here today to attend these hearings and watch them on TV, many of whom, like myself, commute 3 hours a week.
As far as outside of Eastchester, we looked long and hard as to what community we wanted to live in and the council. After the election, we will not see the same 7 individuals sitting here in this room come after whenever the swearing in is. There will be a change. The developer has decided, after submitting this application and seeing the vast community opposition to it, that maybe the composition of the council in a different form after the election would be more suitable to his application that's pending. He put it on, he's done his paperwork. There's been numerous amount of time, effort, and expense by the city in processing the various facets of this application, and I don't see why December was picked, other than to have it be after the election when new members of the council may or may not be here. Or maybe, on the other hand, as the weather starts getting worse, the number of people in the community will find it more difficult to turn out in December, January, and February. We're here now. We spent over an hour a month ago. Mayor, you said that the hearings would not be closed off last month, it would be continued. And now, based upon the developer picking the date, he says he'd like it to come back before the Honorable Council. Why not September? Why not October? Why not November? No, he wants it after the election. Because after the election, there will be different priorities, and there will be certain different people here. The Honorable Mayor has already said that he's not running for re-election. We will have a new mayor in some form or another come the beginning of the year. The next issue I would like to speak upon is, I still haven't had it clearly explained to me, except when Councilwoman Keenan spoke last month. This is not just about the BR1 and the BR2 districts. This is about 8 other districts. He's asking for, I don't remember, the floating zone was removed, so it's called an overlay.
Very easily to the existing zoning regulations now, and that they too can come in and start buying property and start developing that whole area and making it more commercial than it is right now. And I want to just re-express my opposition to this whole plan.
I'm Keenan Schiff. I'm a resident of 81 Ryan Avenue, almost a native. I'm here tonight because I have seen an encroachment through zoning in areas here in the highlands, which is very hard park. That was rezoned, and there are now 5 houses on it. All of these old houses, you read here now that they want a parking lot. Those have been turned into rooming houses. They're making driveways, are garages. I have begged the council people somewhere along the line to take a look and see what is happening to our white plains. We have so many great problems that I think we must look at them as an overall picture and do something about watching it. We are at a loss. I have been a resident in my place for over 40 years. I am a resident of this town. I've gone to school in this town, and I have come back here again, and I've lived here. I have a professional husband. We owe everything to what White Plains had to offer us. But I assure you today, I would hesitate to say to some people, look out for the Highlands. The neighborhood is changing. Take a look, please. Thank you.
And I just wanted to read to you a letter which I received last week from the Soundview Area Citizens Association. Dear Mrs. Higgins, the
Highlands, member of the Highlands Civic Association, and also a candidate for the Common Council. And I heard here earlier that there was perhaps some shopping for candidates. I want it known here that I believe 110-foot building, 11 stories, is way too high for this area.
The reason for the request for adjournment is that our client needs time to review and respond to the concerns and
Sure.
public hearing. Now, the council now has an opportunity to acquiesce or exceed in his requested date of adjournment or somewhere in between. How do you feel, Mrs. Cantina?
Well, Mr. Mayor, if you don't mind, and I know you've been very patient, I'd like to address more than the adjourned hearing. But I speak to the subject for just a minute, and I'll keep it short, since we will be having at least, I hope, only one more hearing on this subject. And if you'd rather I wait, I will, but I'd like to point out a couple of things tonight.
I want to point out to the public, before Mrs. Keeney continues, the reason she's talking this way is that we, as a courtesy, when property owner petitions for a rezoning, in effect follow the schedule that the property owner wants to follow. We did that with the New York Hospital. Was sort of, it is a courtesy. The city did not concoct this, and I might say...
From the city. The application, this permit, is asking that we make a denser zone.
My father's home. And they lived there until they died. At 17 Prospect, Terryville, Connecticut. And this is their neighbors next door, George and Ann Malley. George Malley was practically born in this house. And he went to school across the street. You can't quite see it because of greenery. They're so lush. And he went there from 3rd grade all the way up to senior high school. And a senior and graduated from there. Then he went to work for the Eagle Lock Company in Terryville, Connecticut for all of his working life. Today is August the 6th, 1997. On Wednesday. And this is a Buell reunion. 2 Buells. Franklin Buell. And that's George's brand new car. And this is his new car. You too?
Yes. And I'm missing it for these few days, and oh boy.
Really? It tells that?
Yes, it's showing already.
Where's that, down in Florida?
Yes. And it's kind of a heavy one. I had to get used to it. But I enjoy it.
You do?
Yeah.
And how old are you?
89.
89?
I'll be 89 October 8th.
I think it's quite nice.
You tell us about it.
It's a beautiful Pontiac Bonneville. The reason why I bought it, because I got a good deal on it. And I figured, getting a little bit older, I says, it's about time I started getting something newer.
And so it's brand new, right? From the factory?
Brand spanking new. Factory fresh. I don't know how long it's been on the lot, but, you know, it's new.
Your miniature piano.
It's in the suitcase.
With strings and everything, right?
Yeah, no strings attached.
And the keyboard. How'd you make
Don't work. It just looks nice.
Yeah, how'd you make it look so real?
A little paint.
Paint?
Yeah.
And you're going to make another one?
Yeah, I hope so.
And are you going to write to Steinway and see if they will give you the...
No, I decided I wouldn't impose on him.
He's going to go to Yamaha, the Japanese band.
And Franklin, what do you think of your trip so far, the Buell reunion this year?
Do I need glasses? We have pictures?
Oh, it's been wonderful. Yes, it's been
Oh, okay.
110%.
Oh, that's great. And you've enjoyed yourself, right?
Yes, indeed.
And this is Ann Malley. Ann Malley, that was a delicious dinner.
I'm so glad you enjoyed it.
You are a good cook.
Having you come.
You are a good cook. Tell us about the potatoes again.
Oh, this is how you get your recipes? Very simple. Pre-cook them for about halfway, 20 minutes.
Until they're semi-soft.
Yeah, 20 minutes is good because you're going to have them in the oven an hour on a high temperature.
If it's a real warm day, put them out in the hood of your car. They'll pre-cook that way you can save energy.
Put them in a pan, sprinkle a little olive oil and a little bit of butter.
Extra virgin olive oil.
Yeah, that's right, extra virgin. And put a little parsley on them. And then pop them in the oven about 400 degrees for an hour or so. Turn them once in a while.
And a little bit of parsley?
Mm-hmm.
And no salt.
You can do that, of course, according to your taste.
Have you got any recipes over there, Bob Hope?
No.
You must have something.
No, I'm his son, Hopeless.
That was his real first name, you know, Les Hope.
Les Hope?
Leslie Towns Hope.
I'll be darned. He was born in England, wasn't he?
Yes, in London. 1909.
I think you're wrong.
Yeah? 1903?
No, he's born before that. I think about 1903 or 1902.
What's that make him?
Well, what's he, about 94, 95 now?
You've got your Bible.
Right around. I have my Bible in the house, tells everything like that. I think you're even in there, Glendora. Famous TV personalities. There's a small page in there.
Card table. That was old and crinkly.
Let her get the cookies.
And Ann refinished it, and then she did all these cute little flowers and leaves.
Yes. Remember it had big rips in it?
That's the
one. I'm going to read this up.
Larry, read to us what it says on the plaque, please. Take it out of the box, please.
I'm afraid that somebody's going to back off the porch.
Let's see what it says. It says, presented to Franklin and Glendora Buell.
Say it again, Virginia Dare.
That used to be a good wine, Virginia Dare. Here, Glendora, you can sit right over here.
Presented to Franklin and Glendora Buell, two of the angels in America, in recognition of your service to your country. From your fellow seekers of justice, 5/26/97.
That's quite nice, it really is.
Thank you.
That's beautiful.
Thanks.
That's nice. What did you have to do besides being your own selves?
Well, you had to go poor. You had to become informer paupers and spend all your money.
Here, Glendora, why don't you sit over here?
I will, as soon as I finish my camera work.
That is something. Oh, that's really nice.
Thanks. Two of the Angels of America.
That's a wonderful title.
Yeah.
You should put this outside the door of your apartment for your recognition, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh, thank you.
That's really nice.
Wow.
Has anything to do with the TV program?
Well, yes, and the fights for rights. And of course the lawsuits.
That is just beautiful.
It is.
Oh, thanks.
You should be very proud of that.
Yeah, I'm very
sure
proud
you
of it.
are.
Very happy. That's why we brought it all the way from White Plains to show to you.
It's just, I never seen anything quite like it.
And again, this is Franklin's mother's and father's home, where they lived until they died. And this is Terryville, Connecticut. And this is on a perfect August the 6th, 1997, Wednesday, Anno Domini. nothing to weep about because the weather's so good. Folks, you should watch out now for a summer cold. And if you feel a tightness in your chest and you can't breathe, that's either you've got the flu or you're wearing your designer jeans too tightly. Did you know that they found two bodies in a cave and they were sure that the two bodies were Adam and Eve? And somebody says, why are you so sure that they were Adam and Eve? And the answer obviously was they didn't have any belly buttons. The church, the rummage sale people called up Don and asked him if he had any old clothes that he could take to the rummage sale. And Don thought a while, and they said, well, do you have any old clothes? Don says, well, certainly, but I have a lot of them. He says, but I'm wearing them. Don says that he's worn this suit for so long that it's been installed 5 times. And Annette says that whenever she gets down in the dumps, she goes and buys clothes. And Mary says, oh, is that where she gets them? And there was a sign in a restaurant window, and it says, don't make fun of our coffee. Someday you may be old and weak too. And did you hear about Bob? They called him Sanka. You know why they called him Sanka? There was no active ingredient in the bean. If you get a cold, you know what the cure is for a cold? When you have a cold in your head and you know how you keep it from going into your chest? Got the answer? You just tie a knot in your neck. Today's college graduates, this is the time of the year that the college graduates come out, and today's college graduates go into the world and they face several enormous challenges. And 2 of those challenges are reading and writing. There are so many functional literates at some of our colleges today, you know what? They're going to put their diplomas on cassettes. And Harry in college, guess what? He had all of the women running in circles all around him. That's because he was a track coach. Bill was telling his friend that his son just got his BA degree from college, and his friend says, what does BA stand for? And Bill says, barely adequate. And Pete says that during college he was trying to impress this girl, and he says that during college he was a halfback, and when the girl found out what that meant that he used to stand at the gate and tear the tickets in 2 and give half back. And John was trying to impress his girl about his job, and his girl says, well, what do you do? And John says, I'm on the cutting edge of technology. And come to find out that meant that John was mowing the lawn at IBM. And then Peter came home from medical school, and he handed his diploma to his dad, and he says, here, Dad, he says, here's my diploma from medical college, just the way you and Mom have been telling me. And now I'm going to go out and be a fireman just the way I've been telling you since I was 6. Have you heard about the new contest, folks? You send the company $25,000 and they send you 25 words or less. And Joni said to John, I wouldn't marry you if you were the last man on earth. And John says, that's right, honey. You'd be killed in the stampede.
What, you went so soon? You went again, huh?
John says, I'm on the cutting edge of technology. And come to find out that meant that John was mowing the lawn at IBM. And then Peter came home from medical school, and he handed his diploma to his dad, and he says, here, Dad, he says, here's my diploma from medical college, just the way you and Mom have been telling me. And now I'm going to go out and be a fireman, just the way I've been telling you since I was 6. Have you heard about the new contest, folks? You send the company $25,000, and they send you 25 words or less. And Joni said to John, I wouldn't marry you if you were the last man on earth. And John says, that's right, honey. You'd be killed in the stampede. And Peter took a new girl out to a Chinese restaurant, and he said to her, how do you like your rice? Do you like it steamed or do you like it fried? And the girl says, I like it thrown. And Pete was out with his girl, and Janet says, did anybody ever tell you how wonderful you were? And Pete says, well, no. And Janet says, where did you get the idea? Bill says that his daughter says that she wants to find the perfect man. And Bill keeps telling her, give up the search, honey. Your mother found the last good one. This is Glendora, a cheerful look at life. And we'll return to a chat with Glendora, and we'll find out all these wonderful people who have done so well in their careers and who are willing to take their valuable time and sit down and describe the careers to you so you could latch on to something and aim for something great. Take care. And so I brought in a Coke, and it was warm, and I brought it into Franklin, and I opened the Coke, and the whole thing just burst wide open and went all over me everywhere. Just like the night before I was married. I was painting a bookcase, and I pushed the cover of the paint, and the paint went all through my hair, much to the laughter of my father. So anyway, we cleaned that up with paper towels, and there was a rap on the door, and it was Kathy Michalsick, and she came down with contracts to sign. So we had to sign the contracts, and she didn't ask for the birth certificate, and she didn't ask for the Social Security card, because I haven't seen my Social Security card for years. I haven't seen my birth certificate for years. I couldn't find it anywhere, but Franklin did have his. And I did have our marriage ceremony and the certificate that we were married 32 years ago. So if I wasn't a citizen of the United States because of having been born here many years ago, I certainly was a citizen of the United States having been married to Franklin. But none of that was asked for. Then the stage manager came by. Folks, his name is Biff, and he says, I want to show you how to walk on. You walk on through the green room, backstage, and then around the set, and then you come over and you sit down and at the desk, and he had his, his prancing fluids there. It looked like a fish pond. And then he tells you where to look. He says, you look at David, and he says, you don't look at any of the cameras, and you don't pay any attention to any of the crew. And he says, this is how you walk off, and then you walk off out the same way that the thrill cam comes. So that was good, and Biff was a lot of fun. And then, I forgot to tell you that when we called Madeline Smithberg from the street corner, Franklin talked to her, but she asked to talk to me, particularly to talk to me. And the reason she did that, I guess, she told me very frankly, she says, I wanted to see if you're still up. Meaning, was I still in a good mood and was I going to put on a good show for them? I guess you could always count on that. And then I had to go to makeup, to Candace, who was a very charming person. But that makeup, it's just terrible. I've seen people come out of funeral homes looking better than that. And then the videotaping started at 5:30, right on the button. And we all went into the green room, and it was fun to watch it on a monitor as it was being done. Susan St. James was there with another woman and another woman. You know who Susan St. James is. She's the star of Kate and Allie. And she was on for a long time talking about family games. And then Jimmy Walker came on, and he was in some kind of a silver suit, and he did a stand-up routine, and then he sat down and he talked to to David. Well, as it turned out, folks, David Letterman had some kind of a thing on about gravy. It was sort of sickening, and it took 8 minutes, and it should only take 2 minutes, so it was easy to see that he was running out of time. And so Madeline Smithberg said to me, Glendora, can you come back tomorrow night? He's run out of time. I says, oh boy. And I said, could I come back the night after that? I said, I'd like to set a record for people who have to come back. And she says, what? I said, what is the record? And I says, is it 3 nights? And she says, no, I think it's 4. So I wanted to break that record. And she says, what's more, Glendora, you'll get paid for 2 nights. I didn't know I was going to get paid at all. And I said, gee whiz, do you mean that I'm going to get 2 $50 checks? And she says, it's a whole lot more than $50. So we went back to our dressing room, and David Letterman, I saw him go by in the hall, and you know, he dresses up very nicely. You know, he has a tie and a shirt and a suit. And here I saw him go by in the hall, and he had on his old pair of blue jeans, and he had this old shirt on, and his shirt tail was sticking out. He looked like a bum, either that or some college student. But people cleared out pretty fast, and so we went back to Westchester, and we went to bed, and we set the alarm for 12:20 a.m., and we got up at 12:20 a.m., and we videotaped the show and all of the teases. So folks, here are the teases. The teases is the word that they use, you know, on the news for New York. You hear and such and such and such and such when News 4 returns, or when News 4 continues. They tell you what's coming up. So here were the teases for the first night, September the 15th, Tuesday, 1987. The announcer said over the opening scenes, he said, from New York, it's Late Night with David Letterman. Tonight, Susan St. James, cable TV talk show host Glendora, and comedian Jimmy Walker. And then as the show went on, after the prancing fluids, David says, we got a keen show for you tonight, folks. Susan St. James is here, the lovely, talented Glendora, Jimmy Walker. When you come back, folks, if you can stand it. And then there's another tease somewhere along there, a third one that I missed. And then the last one was after Jimmy Walker had been on and done his stand-up comedy, and he was sitting down with David Letterman. David Letterman says, Glendora, who was supposed to be here tonight, will not be here tonight. And I was sitting in the green room, and I said to myself, she is here tonight. She's sitting right here. She'll be here tomorrow night, folks, and also Rob Reiner, Rick Scheidner. That will be tomorrow night, folks. Thanks for being here, and have a good night, and see you tomorrow. So that ends Chapter 5. So, the next time, this was on Wednesday, September the 16th, Madeline Smithberg did make arrangements for us to park in Rockefeller Center. And she told us that we didn't, since we were old pros, we didn't have to be there until 5 p.m. So when we went to Manhattan, to 50th and 6th Avenue, it's actually the Radio City Music Hall building. There was a uniformed person in white gloves saying, yes, we're expecting you, ma'am. Yes, this way. Go right in, ma'am. Yes, ma'am, this way, ma'am. And we went way, 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 way down underground in the Radio City Music Hall building. And here was this beautiful place, a big basement, and there was a nice place for the Lincoln. And so there was another attendant saying, yes, ma'am, yes, we're expecting you, ma'am, and so forth. And so we parked the car in this beautiful spot. Just think what that real estate is worth. And so then we went through long, long tunnels and up obscure elevators, hidden elevators. And we apparently were going underneath 50th Street into 30 Rockefeller Plaza, where RCA and NBC are. And somehow or other, we got up to the 6th floor through these hidden elevators and everything, and through a hidden door, and there we were on the 6th floor, back again at the Letterman studio. And we told people jokes all the way, and the Pages got out the key to the same dressing room that we had before, and we went into the dressing room, and in no time at all, Frank Gannon was there, and Madeline Smithberg was there, and Madeline was saying, I want to do the interview before the show tonight. She says, I don't want to stay. This is the interview. I want to chat with Glendora. She says, I want to do that tonight before the show, because after the show I want to go see my mother who's in the hospital. So we started doing the interview, and Kathy Michaelsick was back there with more contracts to sign. And that was the fastest setting up of a camcorder and a monitor and all of the accessories and the microphone that I ever saw. And so we did. We sat down and we interviewed Madeline Smithberg. And it was a very good interview. And all the time there's a loudspeaker in the dressing room announcing, Liz Smith, report to the studio. This was live at 5. And so-and-so report to the studio. And Chuck Scarborough was there. And oh yeah, the weatherman, he was there. And they were all coming back and forth. But we got the interview done about 5:32. 2 minutes after, all of the band started playing, and all of the applause and all the cheering and all the whistling for the David Letterman show that was starting. And so we got the interview done. And Madeline made me go back. I was hoping she would forget it, to go back to that loathsome makeup. And it was just terrible. So I had another job on that. And then we all went to the green room to watch the show. And that was the night that, who was the first guest? It was just Rob Reiner. Rob Reiner was on, and he came out after he'd been on with the David Letterman show, and he came out and he said hello to me, and he says, good luck to you tonight. He says, I hope you get on. The third guest was a comedian, Rick Scheidner, and he was a bundle of nerves, and there was a woman, my nerves aren't too good either, and there was a woman with him, and she was reading a book on archaeology, and Smithberg was telling me not to carry anything onto the set. I wonder why that is. They just won't let you hold anything in your hand coming onto the set. And Frank Gannon was around, and I met the producer, the new producer, Bob Morton, and the producer's assistant was there, and David Letterman's assistant was there, the same people as the night before, and a couple of other people. Of course, there were a lot of pages everywhere. And the thrill cam wasn't working, and David Letterman was very upset about that. So here are the teases for the second night, folks. The opening, the announcer was saying the cable TV talk show host, Glendora. And then David, after he finished his jokes, his monologue at the beginning, he says, the woman who was supposed to be here last night, we had such a great show last night, it was white hot, anyway, has consented to be here tonight at Glendora. And then the audience cheered, and David said, whenever I say something like that, there's a voice in the back of my head that says, David, you're full of hot gas. Then there was a big noise, and he says, now what was that? And he says, Rob Reiner, and Richard Scheidner. And then another tease later on in the show was, we have a great show for you tonight, folks. Rob Reiner, Glendora, Richard Scheidner. All of this and much more when you come back tonight. And then the third tease was, coming up on this show, Glendora, and tomorrow is another great show. That's Solid Gold. Then he said to Paul, he says, do you have any Rolaids? And Paul says, well, he says, I think I have a problem here tonight. And Paul says, well, I could send out for some. And David says, could you? And then he went on to say, so he's starting about tomorrow night's show. And he says it'll be Leonard so-and-so and the Grateful Dead. And now he said, let's bring on Glendora, shall we? Okay. Well, so it began. And the introduction was, our next guest believes in using television to spread her own special brand of happiness. She has made over 100 commercials, and we have an example of one right here. All right? This is Glendora for delicious Worthington Veggie-Links. Veggie-Links by Worthington, folks, have no cholesterol. Delicious Veggie-Links have fewer calories than regular hot dogs, and Veggie-Links have no preservatives. I have no preservatives either. You see the wrinkles? Get your delicious Veggie-Links at the Glendora Health Nook at...
No need to shop everywhere. Go straight to Twin Fair.
Well, the audience got quite a kick out of that, and David Letterman's reaction to that, as he was making believe chewing the hot dog. And then he said, just a second, folks, he says, and her show A Chat with Glendora has featured guests like Robert C. Wright, the president of NBC. Please welcome the happy lady, Glendora. And then came the entrance that Biff told me how to do. And of course it was a typical David Letterman wild cheering audience. And so we shook hands, and I sat down, and I shook both of my hands with his one hand. And he says, how are you? He says, it's good to see you. He says, please have a seat. He says, where are you from? Where does this show originate? And I said, you mean A Chat with Glendora? And he says, yes. And I says, well, you can see it on Manhattan Cable TV and Paragon Cable TV in Westchester, where all the rich people live, on United Artists Cable TV. And he says, yes, but where does it originate? And I said, well, we originated in Mr. Wright's office and in Madeline Smithberg's office, dressing room, and the audience laughed at that. And the chairman of General Foods and the chairman of Nestle's, and we originated in people's offices. And I said, some people come to our home, David. He says, I see. And I said, now the chairman of Colgate-Palmolive, he came to our home, and he said, David says, how do you get all these? And I said, at 7 a.m. And that made the audience laugh. And he says, well, I guess you were steamed that he was there so early. And I said, no, the thing that interested us about him is that he did his own research. He went through all of our cupboards to see if we had any Colgate-Palmolive products. And David says, and what did the research turn up? And I said, 0. And he did and David laughed at that. And the audience laughed, and he didn't look under the sink, though, in the kitchen or in the bathroom, where he would have found some, and he didn't go into where he would have found some Colgate-Palmolive products. And David said, well, tell me about the show, the format. When somebody tunes in, what do they see? And so I told him they see, where were you born, where did you go to school, what were your jobs, what was your work like, and what advice would you give a youngster to get started on such a career today? And David says, it's an interview show. Yes, that's what we asked Mr. Wright. A half-hour show, is it? Yes. Isn't it amazing how much the public will stand? And is it on once a week? Yes. How many years has it been on? I've been on TV for 35 years, but that show has been on the air a year and a half. Are you hoping that this particular show will grow, maybe expand, maybe get to network status or a local TV station, maybe, or, well, I sorted out that. You don't think that will happen? No. Let's, well, you sure have the wardrobe for it. And that made me laugh, and it made the audience laugh. And what I had really should have told him is that I'm a peacock, and that we have to dress like that. And I should have also told him, well, I'll tell you about that later. And he says, well, let's take a look at it. He said, show me some of the footage. Now, this is Robert Wright, the president now. And I said, oh, yes, very affectionately, because it was such a good interview. And how did you get this guy? He says, we have asked him for years and years. And I said, have you? He says, yeah, and he won't come on. And how did you get him? And so I said, well, it must be my good looks, huh? And the audience laughed at that, and he says, yeah, except I did talk to him over the phone, so I guess that wouldn't have helped. And I said, no, I did figure this way. He's a nice man, and he does want to help the youth, and that's what this is all about. And David says, he does want to help the youth? Yes, that's what this program is all about. And David said again, he does want to help the youth, and the audience was laughing pretty hard at that. And David says, Paul, did you hear anything about Robert wants to of this country? And Paul says, Robert Wright? Yeah, oh yes.
And how many years have you been on the air?
Well, I've been in television 35 years, but that show's been on the air a year and 3/4.
Mm-hmm. Are you hoping that this particular show will maybe grow, perhaps expand, maybe get to a network status or a local TV station or something?
Well, I sort of doubt that.
You don't think that'll happen? Well, you sure have the wardrobe for it, you know. Now let's take a look. Show me some of the footage. This is Robert Wright, the president now
Lord, yeah.
of NBC. You know, how did you get this guy to be on the show? Because we've asked him for years and years.
Have you?
Oh yeah, and he won't come on the show. How did you get him?
It must be my good looks, huh?
Yeah.
Except I did talk to him over the phone, so that wouldn't have helped.
Uh-huh.
No, I figure this way, David. He's a nice man, and he does want to help the youth, and that's what this is all about.
He wants to help the youth.
Yeah, that's what this problem...
Have we heard anything about that? He wants to help the youth? Well, did you hear anything about Robert Wright wanting to help the youth of this country?
Robert C. Wright?
Yeah.
Yeah, he wants to help the youth.
I think he just... I think he's just looking to balloon the stock prices. I think that's about all we're into here.
No, he's a very nice
Very nice man. All right, now let's take a look at a couple of seconds from his interview on your show, okay? We have that here? Yeah. Robert C. Wright and Glendora, helping the youth. It is a chat with Glendora.
And then we got General Electric acquired RCA. And then I came over from General Electric to become the president of NBC. And that's how I got here.
Oh, it's such an interesting career. And that's how you ended up in Fairfield, because I think General Electric's table was centered in Fairfield, wasn't it?
Yes, I actually never worked in Fairfield.
Oh, you never did?
No, I've worked, most recently my office was in Stamford, Connecticut before I came here.
Oh.
Although I live in that area, but I didn't work there.
I see, yeah. This is Mr. Robert C. Wright, who is the president and chief executive officer of NBC. And he'll be back in just a second and tell you what his work is like to see if you'd like to aim for that as a career. And then he'll also give you some ideas how to get started in broadcasting in today's world.
Yeah. It seems like you and he were dressed alike. Didn't you? So you sort of have the same kind of look there. Now, I don't want to linger on this, but how did General Electric's acquisition of RCA, how did that ultimately help the youth of this country?
What helped the youth was Mr. Wright telling how he got started, because he was at the same point. Yeah, he was at the same point in his development as the youth who watch the program we hope are in theirs.
I see. Now tell me about your personal recipe for happiness. You're known as the happiness lady.
Well,
is that what they say?
No.
What do they call you?
Glendora.
Yeah.
And what did you say your name was?
I'm Dave. That'll be my last night.
You are a very good interviewer.
Well, thank you.
And I'm going to recommend you for a raise.
Thank you.
The recipe for happiness, David, is that there's one thing in this world that you can do better than anybody else. And if you will go by yourself, you will find out what that is. And you will do it, and you'll be happy. Now, if you don't do it, David, it's going to nag at you every second of your life.
So you find out what it is that you're good at.
No, the one thing that you can do better than anybody else.
The one thing you can do better than anyone else, and you just concentrate on that.
Yes, you do.
And then that'll make you happy.
Well, sure, because you'll get everything you want.
Yeah. And the Vegilinks, vegetable protein, no meat at all in here, right?
No meat.
Okay. All right. Well, geez, Glendora, good luck with the show.
Oh, thank you very much.
And I hope you can come back and see us again sometime.
Oh, we'd like to very much. Would that take 2 days or just one the next time?
I don't know. Oh, that's right. You were supposed to be here last night. Okay. We have to go here now. We have other guests. But thank you very much. Nice to see you.
His wife says, no, you've underdeposited. And Peter says that his wife has 2 closets full of nothing to wear. And Pat was asked, what do you have in common with your wife? And Pat says, I don't know. The only thing I can think of is that we were married on the same day. And Bob says there's something about his wife in a checking account, a checking book. Once she starts one, she can't put it down. Ellen got up early in the morning. Well, she slept late is what happened. And she got up and she had her head full of curlers, and she had on her old bathrobe, and the garbage truck was going by, and she was afraid she's going to miss it, so she ran out, and as I say, she had all these curlers in her hair, and she had this old bathrobe, and she had 3 bags of garbage, and she said to the driver of the truck, is it too late? And the driver of the truck says, no, go ahead, get in. Jane says the 4-letter words that bother her the most are cook, wash, dust, and iron. And Jerry said to Jason, my wife doesn't understand me. Does yours? And Jerry says, I didn't know that she knew you. And Hal said that he met his wife at a travel bureau. She was out to get a vacation, and he was a last resort. And Hal says that nobody in the world cooks like his wife, although the United States Army comes pretty close to it. I said that she had a bad accident tonight when she was cooking, but that her husband ate it anyway. And Harry says that his wife's meals are not planned, they're premeditated. And Harriet, she puts popcorn in the pancake batter so that the pancakes will flip over by themselves. And Don says that he's getting better in his driving lessons. You know those signs that say 1 hour parking? Well, he's getting so he can do it in 45 minutes now. Folks, Hattie and all of her relatives, they were very excited, and they all gathered to hear the uncle's will. And so, as I say, there was a great deal of attention and excitement. And so the lawyer started out reading the uncle's will, and here's what the uncle said. Being of sound mind, I spent all of my money. And when Paul and his relatives gathered to hear their eccentric uncle's will, the lawyer read the following. He said, to my nephew, Robert, whom I promised to remember. Hi there, Robert. And Peter, Voss said to him that there must be something to reincarnation. After all, there must be some truth to reincarnation. He says, did you ever notice how all of the office workers seem to come back to life at 5 p.m.? And Pat gave, this is the advice that Pat gave to his 4 sons. One was, work like a dog, eat like a horse, think like a fox, and run like a rabbit. And don't forget to see your veterinarian every month. And did you hear about the absent-minded professor? He was in the revolving door. He couldn't remember whether he was coming or going. And Patricia and her friends, her girlfriends, belong to a hiking club, and they call it the Walkie-Talkies. This is Glendora, a cheerful look at life now. Folks, keep the courage flaming. everybody. This is Carmino, and he's singing you a song. Can you hear it? When the teacher left the room in school, Tommy wrote on the blackboard, "I'm the best kisser in the class." And when the teacher came back, she said, "Did you write that on that blackboard?" And he says, "Yes." So she made him stay after school. And the next day, a little girl said to him, "See, it doesn't pay to misbehave." And Tommy says, "No, but it pays to advertise." And somebody who said it doesn't pay to advertise, say goodbye before you go. Say goodbye. Let the folks see you. See here. Say goodbye. Say goodbye. Show them your new collar, see, with the bell and everything. Say bye-bye. Bye-bye. Somebody who said it didn't pay to advertise was this old man up who had a country store. And he says, "No, I'm not going to advertise." He says, "It wouldn't pay. It doesn't pay to advertise." He says, "I've had this store for 40 years. And the ad salesman says, "You see that church up there on top of the hill?" He says, "That church has been there 150 years, but they still ring the bell." A traveler went into a drugstore to buy a tube of toothpaste. He wanted a small tube of toothpaste. And the tube that she got said large on it. And she says, "No, I want small." And the druggist says, "Ma'am," he says, "this toothpaste comes in 3 sizes, large, super, and giant. And if you want small, you have to get large." Arthur has some advice for everybody. Always breathe through your nose. You know why? It keeps your mouth shut. And Andrew made it to 100 years old, and everybody was congratulating him. And he says, "Why?" He says, "All I did was grow old," he says, "and it took me a long, long time to do that." And depending upon how you live your life, you can die very old at 30, or you can die young at 80. Folks, why is it that some people drink wine instead of water? John says the reason he drinks wine and he won't drink water is that he has an iron constitution. If he drank water, it would rust. Peter says that the water in his hometown is so hard, you have to chew it before you swallow it. And Mark was going through customs, and he told the customs agent, he was carrying one suitcase, and he told the customs agent, he says, "Don't rummage through that suitcase." He says, "It's only clothes." But the customs agent kept on, and he was rummaging through all of the clothes, and he came up with a bottle of bourbon, and he said to Mark, he says, "If this is only clothes," he says, "what do you call this?" And Mark says, "Oh," he says, "that's just my nightcap." Now, Peter is in charge of a huge office, folks. And he always manages to hire 3 or 4 ballet dancers because he wants somebody in that office who at least is on his toes or her toes. Now, the soap company had a slogan contest, and they wanted the best slogan for their soap. And one of the most interesting entries they got was this: "Use our soap, and if you don't, for heaven's sakes, use our perfume." Are you an American cat? I think you're an Italian cat. He likes pasta. Yes, and that's why your name is Carmino. Now, you know what I like best about being an American, folks? The last 4 words of American are, "I can." Now, when a comedian got an award for his spontaneity, he said, "I'd like to thank the 4 people who are responsible for my spontaneity," and that would be my 4 writers. And just think, if Robert Schuller ever got an award for his spontaneity, for his writing, he'd have to thank his 4 writers, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. A poet has to be one of 2 things, right, Carmino? A poet either has to be miserable, or he has to be in love. It's one of the 2 things a poet has to be, either miserable or in love. Now, only TV actors, folks, can die twice. They die first when the death takes away the body, and second, when death takes away the popularity. There was this play on the TV, folks, and it said that all of the characters in the play were fictitious, and that there was intended to be no resemblance to any person, living or dead. And Mary says, "Yes, that's what's wrong with the play." Robert Benchley said that it took him 15 years to find out that he was not a writer, but by then he was so successful he couldn't afford to give it up. Now, if you're on your way to work, you don't get hit by a machine. At work, you'll get replaced by one. Isn't that right, Carmino? You don't work at all. No, you have it pretty soft. And two secretaries were heard talking to each other, and one of the secretaries said, I know that that computer will do the work of 3 men, but frankly, I'd rather have the 3 men. That's a very good song, Carmino. And finally, folks, by the time we learn how to behave ourselves, we're too old to do anything about it. This is Glendora, a cheerful look at life. And now let's return to a chat with Glendora and keep the courage flaming. I think that's just about all we're into here. And I said, no, he's a very nice man. A very nice man, David repeated. Well, let's take a look at this, he said, this interview on your show. Do we have this here? Robert C. Wright and Glendora helping the youth, a chat with Glendora.
And then we got General Electric acquired RCA. And then I came over from General Electric to become the president of NBC, and that's how I got here.
Oh, it's such an interesting career. And that's how you ended up in Fairfield, because I think General Electric's table was centered in Fairfield, wasn't it?
Yes, I actually never worked in Fairfield.
Oh, you never did?
No, I've worked, most recently my office was in Stamford, Connecticut before I came here.
Oh.
Although I live in that area, but I didn't work there.
I see, yeah. This is Mr. Robert C. Wright, who is the president and chief executive officer of NBC. And he'll be back in just a second and tell you what his work is like to see if you'd like to aim for that as a career. And then he'll also give you some ideas how to get started in broadcasting in today's world.
And David Letterman said, yeah. And then there was a lot of cheering and a lot of laughter and a lot of applause. And David Letterman says, it seems like you and he were dressed alike. And that, of course, was very funny. But I should have told David Letterman, yes, I was dressed like Robert Wright, but I was also dressed like David Letterman. I had on my David Letterman shoes. Well, he continued to press his point. He says, I don't want to linger on this. He says, but how did General Electric's acquisition of RCA, how did that ultimately help the youth of this country? To which the audience laughed heartily. And I should have told David then that if you're right, you can't be wrong. David continued, what helped the youth, I tried to tell him, what helped the youth was Mr. Wright's, how he got started, because he was at the same, and David says, I see occasional information. I said, yeah, but he was at the same point in his development as the youth who watch the program are, we hope, in theirs. And David says, I see. Then he says, tell me, what is your personal recipe for happiness? You're known as the, I'll tell you, he says, oh yes. He says, you're known as the happiness lady. Is that what they call you? And I said, no. And he says, well, what do they call you? And he really had me there for a minute, and then I told him, Glendora. And then I said to him, and what did you say your name was? And he says, I'm David. He says, and this is my last night. And I told him then that, I said, David, you're a very good interviewer. He says, oh, well, thank you. And I said, I'm going to recommend you for a raise. And then he said, thank you. And I said, the recipe for happiness? Well, David, there's one thing in this world that you can do better than anybody else. And if you go by yourself, you'll find out what that is, and you will do it, and you'll be happy. Now, if you don't, David, it's going to nag at you every second of your life. And David says, so, you find out what it is you are good at? And I said, no. You find out the one thing that you can do better than anybody else. The one thing that you can do better than anybody else, he repeated, and you concentrate on that. And I said, yes, you do, and then you'll be happy. And he said, and then that will make you happy? And I said, well, sure, because then you'll get everything you want. He says, yeah. And it's the way he said, yeah, that made the audience laugh. And then he leaned over and he says, and the Vegilinks? He says, vegetable protein, no meat at all in here, right? I says, no meat. He says, well, geez, Glendora. He says, good luck with the show. I said, thank you very much. And he says, I hope you can come back and see us again. And I says, okay, I'd like to do that very much. Now, is that, would that take 1 day or 2 days? And of course the audience had him on that one. And David says, ha ha. He says, oh, he says, that's right. You were supposed to be here the first night. He says, well, okay. He says, we have to go now. We have other guests. Thank you very much. And then again, I gave him a double handshake. And that was the end of it. And then up came one of the pictures. You know, they had these stills. And up came a picture of a New York City vendor with a big umbrella. And he was selling sausages. Of course, that was in order of the Vegelinks. I didn't get a chance to ask him if his father worked for the United States Post Office. I assumed he was, because after all, he was a letterman. And I called Kathy Michalsick, and I asked her to send me copies of the contract, and they did that. And then the Monday following, less than a week, a huge check came. It was for almost $1,000. It was for $480 for each night. I think that had something to do with my belonging to the American Federation of Television and Radio Artists. And the government took about a third of that. And then what else happened? Oh, I called and I asked if David Letterman could be a guest on A Chat with Glendora. And I guess I pretty much got the impression that, well, and somebody, quote unquote, said he doesn't do anything. So I guess that's not going to happen. And I called and I asked to have permission to play the segment, the 7-minute segment, on A Chat with Glendora. But he wouldn't grant that either, or any part of it. So since it had already been laid down on the program, I had to tell Manhattan Cable TV and Paragon Cable TV to put up a slate to do the first part of the program, which was the interview with Margaret Smithburg. And then when they came to the part with David Letterman, to go to black and put up a slate over that standby, and then go on to the next interview. And then at UA Columbia, I had to go over there and get that tape and edit out the David Letterman part, and I covered it up with Glendora jokes. So that's about how that went. It's too bad that I couldn't have played for you. It was a lot of fun to see it. And then about a week later, I got a call from a very arrogant NBC lawyer, an NBC attorney, and he said he was going to put an injunction on the show not to play it because of the David Letterman segment was in there. And I should have gone, let him go ahead and do that. That would have been a great laugh, because he had the wrong show in mind, because he called after the supposedly David Letterman spot had been played, which it hadn't been played. So I should have let him go ahead, because he was talking about the wrong show. But I couldn't do that for the sake of the people who were on that second show. They had to see that. And so I guess that's all of the excitement and all of the fireworks. It sure was a thrill, and it was sure funny throughout the whole thing. It was a lot of fun. So that's Glendora on A Chat with Glendora on David Letterman. And he covered the three things: the Glendora Happy Book, and A Chat with Glendora, and Glendora Cheerful Look at Life. And you keep your courage flaming. Hi there, everybody. How are you today? Welcome to Glendora Cheerful Look at Life. Bob says that he does his hardest work before breakfast. And Pete says, what is that? And Bob says, getting up. And Jimmy had a birthday party, and he invited 2 grandparents, 4 uncles, and 2 aunts. And his mother says, everybody that you've invited to the party is older. And Jimmy says, well, they seem to be the ones with the money. Now, Bob and Mary were on a cruise, and Mary was talking to another passenger, Joan. And Mary says, I like my cabin very much, but I don't like the washing machine on the wall. And Joan says, that's not a washing machine, that's a porthole. And Mary says, gee, I guess that's why I never got my clothes back. Now, Mrs. Morgan was teaching her 4th graders, and she says, use the word bewitches in a sentence. And Bobby thought a little while, and then he says, "You go ahead, and I'll be with you in a minute." And as I sang about Bob and Mary on their cruise, Bob said to Mary, "Did you ever see anybody eat as much as that man who sat across the table from us at lunch?" And Mary says, "No, I never did." She says, "It must be what they call a ship stowaway." And Pete was asked, if your mother gave you a big apple and a small apple and told you to share it with your brother, which apple would you give your brother? And Pete says, you mean my big brother or my little brother?" And all the children in school were asked to write an essay on what they would do if they got $1 million. And all of the children wrote industriously what they would do, all except John, and he just did nothing, and he just looked at the ceiling. And the teacher says, "All the other children wrote out an essay what they would do, and all you did was nothing. You just looked at the ceiling." And John says, "That's what I'd do if I got $1 million. And when Mrs. Baxter had a party, and little Jeannie came home, Jeannie's mother says, "Did you thank Mrs. Baxter for that nice party she gave the children?" And Jeannie says, "Well, I was going to, but as we were going out the door, the girl in front of me thanked Mrs. Baxter for the party, and Mrs. Baxter says, 'Don't mention it,' so I didn't." And Harry was asked, he says, "I understand," or somebody was talking to him, and he says, "I understand that brunettes have sweeter personalities than redheads or blondes." And Harry says, "I don't think so." He says, "My wife has been all three, and I never saw any difference at all." And Mrs. Morgan was teaching the kids the alphabet, and she said to the class, "What comes after the letter T?" And the class in unison said, "V." So a man was walking down this street, clad only in a barrel, and the policeman said, "Are you a poker player?" And the man says, "No, but I just came from some people who were." In a small town, there's not much to see, but what you hear really makes up for it. And a woman was making out an application for credit, and she hesitated for a long time when it came to the part that said to give her age. And finally, a clerk says, "Ma'am, the worse it gets, the longer you wait." And Billy says that if the Lord gives us our daily bread, and if Santa Claus brings all the Christmas presents, and if the stork brings all the babies, what good is it to have Daddy around? Joe says that TV is a device for people who do not have a thing to do, to watch people who cannot do a thing. The only people who will gladly listen to both sides of an argument are the people on the other end of the party line. Elsie said to Elaine, "This jewelry once belonged to a millionaire." And Elaine says, "Really? What was his name?" And Elsie says, "Woolworth." Little Peter went to the hospital to have his tonsils out, and when he came back, he told all of his little young friends, he says, "The nurses over there, they walk around and they're wearing blindfolds over their mouths." And John has a new baby, and he was telling everybody how much the new baby enjoys his company. John says, because he says, "I know this for a fact," he says, "because while I'm away at work, the baby sleeps," and he says, "and when I'm home at night, the baby stays up all night." And Paul said, "Daddy, what does college bread mean?" And Daddy says, "It means a 4-year loaf with the flavor of youth made out of the old man's dough." This is Glendora, a cheerful look at life, folks. Now keep your courage flaming.
You enjoy the people who were from the newspapers here tonight?
Oh, very much. They're both, as you say, newspaper men, and they reminded me of my 36 years as a reporter in Springfield, Massachusetts, and in Buffalo. Both of them know people that I know, and particularly Mr. Bacardi of the Associated Press, who asked about Mr. Kirkover, who was the editor of the Buffalo News for so many years and who made it the good newspaper that it was. And he also knew John Laird, who was managing editor of the Richmond, Virginia newspapers, and who once offered me a job.
Oh, that was very good. Thank you for adding your part to this. We appreciate that, Mr. Buell.
Oh, thank you.
Well, boys and girls, here's Mr. McGowan, who's the manager of public affairs for Gannett Incorporated. Hi, John.
How you doing, Glendora?
Oh, fine. How are you doing? You were born where?
I was born in Jersey City, New Jersey.
Oh, hooray! And you went to school there?
I did. St. Peter's College was the final school.
St. Peter's College. And what did you take as an undergraduate?
Well, I took an English major, which with the intention of writing someday.
Right.
Well, the paper folded, went out of business, and the next step was to the Associated Press, which is a wire service that serves a lot of newspapers.
Yes.
And that was back to reporting again.
Oh,
And then from there, I joined up with Gannett.
You joined up from Gannett. Now, what did you do at AP? What were you reporting?
State news in New Jersey. At
State
the
news
State
in New
House.
Jersey.
Right.
And then you ended up with Gannett.
Right. I moved across the hall to Gannett. Which was, actually, it's Gannett, by the way.
Oh, it is Gannett.
The emphasis on the net.
Okay, I want to get that straight. It is Gannett.
Right.
Because you know who told me, the man who's in charge of the Center for Media Studies at Columbia University, you know him.
Right, yes, Everett.
Yeah, Everett Dennis. He told me that yours was Gannett and the one up in Maine was Gannett.
No, we're Gannett.
You're Gannett.
Yes, we are Gannett.
You are Gannett.
The chairman of our company likes to say the emphasis on the net.
He does?
Yes.
Okay, I got that straight.
Okay.
So it's Gannett.
Right. Interesting place to be a reporter. And then USA Today came along, which is owned by my company, and I was the correspondent for USA Today in New York for the next 3 years.
You were a correspondent for USA Today for 3 years.
Right.
Gee, that was interesting. Just tell us a little bit about that, what it consisted of.
Well, we've all heard of Bernard Goetz by now. It consisted of writing about Mr. Goetz and his troubles on the subway with 4 youths he said were trying to rob him.
Yes.
Jerry Ferraro,
yes.
the first woman to write for vice president,
Yes.
I covered her.
Yes.
Let me see what else was going on around there. Actually, it was mostly police news.
Police news.
Or business news, one or the other.
Yeah, that's how you started out.
Right, it's not a dying business. There are an awful lot of newspapers still reporting the news in this country and doing a good job of it.
And now, boys and girls, Mr. Louis Bacardi, who is the president and general manager of the Associated Press, is kind enough to come and see you tonight, along with his son, Mark. Louis, you were born where?
In New York City, in the Bronx.
You were? And you went to school where?
I went to school there and to Fordham Prep.
Oh, you went to Fordham?
And then Fordham College.
Yes.
And after that, I went to Columbia University, where I received a master's degree.
A master's degree. Now, first of all, what did you take at Fordham, undergraduate?
I studied journalism. I had begun my interest in journalism when I was in high school.
Really? You got,
I was the editor of the high school paper, which is something I'd urge everybody to be interested in if they're interested in the field at all.
Good thing. And what got you interested in newspapers so early?
I really don't know. I was lucky. I think most young people get to be a lot older than I was in high school without any idea of what they want to do. But sort of early on, I enjoyed the idea of writing stories and having other people read them. And the high school paper gave me a great chance to do that.
Oh, I think that's terrific. Was there some adult who was interested in newspapering?
I remember talking with my dad about it, and he encouraged me, but it was something that I wanted to do.
And then at Fordham, you took to journalism, and when you got your master's at Columbia, that must have been in journalism, right? And your first job out of Columbia?
Was in New York at a newspaper that's not published any longer, although I didn't have anything to do with that, I should add. The World Telegram was the name of it.
The World Telegram. Remember it well. And what, you were a reporter on there?
I began as a reporter and did all the sorts of things that young reporters have to do, and some of them aren't very exciting. That's just the way you start in this business.
Well.
And then later on, it got a little more interesting, and then I decided I wanted to become an editor.
An editor?
So that I would have the chance to have more to do with more stories. And then I switched from reporting to editing.
Was that on the World Telegram?
That's right.
And
I was there a total of about 6 years, and then I went with the Associated Press and began there as an editor and have had various editing jobs at the AP.
An editor of the Associated Press in New York.
That's right. I'm an anomaly among AP people. Most AP people have worked somewhere else in the world. I'm a New Yorker.
You never left, I guess. What does an editor in New York do on the AP? What did you do?
The AP is a news service, and our job is to provide news stories and pictures and voice tapes and a little bit of television footage to newspapers or radio stations or television stations all over the country. And so our job in New York, which is our headquarters, is to direct that news coverage and the preparation of those stories for all those different people.
And as an editor, did you decide what stories were going to be covered?
That's part of an editor's job, exactly.
Uh-huh.
You decide what the reporters will cover, and you also decide what shape the story should have, what information is important, what things need to be explained so that when people read the story in the newspaper that it makes some sense to them.
And then that was sent all over the place.
The AP distributes its news all over the world.
By wire. I bet nowadays you do it by satellite, maybe?
Indeed.
Yeah,
It used to be by very slow wire.
Slow wire was
now
slow,
it's by very fast satellites.
Now, and then what was the next step up from that?
For me?
Yes.
I became the managing editor, which is the second level editorial job in the AP, and then I became executive editor, which is what I guess
managing editor to do.
The managing editor is the person who is right in the midst of the coverage. His job is to be in the middle of everything that's going on and to direct the staff through people under him, of course, around the world. The executive editor is the next step above him, and then above that post is the post of president, which is the job I have now.
Now the executive editor, is that more or less administration?
Well, no, it's some administration, but he is the senior news executive, and let me tell you, that's a fun job. The post is the post of president.
Now the executive editor, is that more or less administration?
Well, no, it's some administration, but he is the senior news executive, and let me tell you, that's a fun job.
It is? You tell us why?
Because you're involved in so many interesting things and so many difficult things, and if anything happens anywhere in the world, in the state, in the region, it's something you need to know about, and that's very interesting.
And you know it first, right?
Well, you hope you know it first. Sometimes you don't.
Now, how many years is this at AP?
I've been at AP about 20 years.
Executive editor. Okay, and you were made president when?
I was made president 2.5 years ago.
So for this is about the 18th year that you're the executive editor.
I've been there for 20 years. 18 years, for 18 years, I was either the managing editor or the executive editor. And then about 2.5 years ago, I became president.
Back, he's going to describe to you the work of the president, see if you'd like to aim for that as a career. And then he's going to give you some ideas how you could get started in news today. And this is a chat with Glendora. Now, Mr. Bacati, won't you tell the boys and girls what the work as president of the Associated Press consists of? Give us an idea of it from day to day.
Well, day to day, it's pretty busy.
Something that tells you what you can afford, but it doesn't keep you from buying it. And an employer is somebody who wants people who are between the ages of 25 and 30 with 40 years experience. And what is a bargain? Well, that's something that you don't need at a price you just can't resist. And in prison, this man used to go to prison, and he used to give lectures to the prisoners. And finally, one day, the prisoners got together and protested to the warden that they didn't want to hear any more lectures because, after all, the lectures were not included in their sentences. Now, children, you can say this about children. Children are a comfort in your old age, and also they'll help you get there faster. Billy was asked what he thought of parents, and he says, oh, they're okay. He says, if I'm noisy, they spank me, and if I'm quiet, they take my temperature. Now, on the blackboard, the preacher wrote, I pray for all. And then the lawyer came along, and he said, I plead for all. And then the doctor came along, and he wrote underneath that, I prescribe for all. And then the consumer came along and wrote underneath that, I pay for all. Listen to this, folks. A Chinese tourist wrote home, an American university is a vast athletic association where, however, some studies are maintained for the benefit of the feeble-bodied. Blair says you can always tell a man from Harvard, but you can't tell him much. And Carl said to his, there was a party, and he said to his professor, he says, I understand that you're one of the 3 men in the whole world who can understand Einstein's theory of relativity. And this cloud came over the professor's face. And Carl says, oh, I'm so sorry. He says, I know how modest you are. And the professor says, no, he says, that isn't it. He says, I'm just trying to think who the 3rd one is. He says that the Chinese make it an invariable rule that on New Year's Day, they settle all their debts. And Brian says, well, sure. He says, they don't have Christmas a week before. Now, the reason it costs so much to live, folks, that's because yesterday's luxuries have become today's necessities. And if a horse, if his nose is pointing to the north, where is his tail pointing? To the south? No, to the ground. This is Glendora, a cheerful look at life. Keep the courage flaming, and let's return now to a chat with Glendora.